r/AITA for getting my boss fired after she dress coded my hijab? Excuse me, Amira? Can I speak with you for a moment? My blood turned cold. Sarah's voice had that particular tone, the one she used right before she was about to make my day miserable. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been putting the finishing touches on our client presentation, the one we were supposed to deliver in 20 minutes. Of course, I said, forcing a smile as I stood from my desk. Around me, the marketing floor buzzed with its usual Tuesday morning energy, but I could feel eyes starting to turn our way. Sarah had a talent for making these conversations public spectacles. She didn't move toward her office or even a conference room. Instead, she planted herself right there in the middle of the open floor plan, arms crossed, her blonde bob swaying as she tilted her head in that condescending way that had become all too familiar over the past 8 months. I'm going to need you to go home and change before the Morrison Industries presentation. The words hit me like a slap. I'm sorry, what? Your headscarf. She gestured vaguely at my hijab, a beautiful navy blue silk that perfectly complemented my blazer. I'd spent extra time that morning making sure everything looked polished and professional. It's not really appropriate for such an important client meeting. We need to maintain certain professional appearance standards. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. Around us, conversations had started to die down. Jessica from social media was openly staring. Mike from accounts had paused mid-stride on his way to the coffee machine. Sarah, I don't understand. This is professional attire. I've worn hijab to every client meeting for the past 8 months. Well, Morrison Industries is our biggest potential client. We can't afford to, make them uncomfortable. Her voice dropped to what she probably thought was a considerate whisper, but in the open office, everyone could still hear. Maybe you could just wear your hair down today? You have such pretty hair when I've seen you without it. My cheeks burned. When had she seen me without my hijab? I racked my brain. Had she followed me to the bathroom? Seen me through a window somehow? My hijab is part of my religious practice, I said, surprised my voice came out steady. And it's perfectly professional. Sarah's expression hardened. Amira, I'm not asking. This is a direct instruction from management about appropriate presentation for client-facing meetings. If you can't comply with company dress code, perhaps you should reconsider whether you're the right fit for this presentation. Or this company. The threat hung in the air like smoke. My first corporate job. My dream of working in marketing. My parents' pride when I'd landed this position straight out of college. All of it balanced on a knife's edge because of a piece of fabric that had never hurt anyone, never affected my work, never been anything but a part of who I am. I became hyper-aware of everything, the hum of the air conditioning, the way my hands were shaking slightly, the absolute silence that had fallen over our section of the floor. Even the phone seemed to have stopped ringing. I need to think about this, I managed. You have 5 minutes to decide, Sarah said loudly, checking her Apple Watch with theatrical precision. The clients arrive in 15 minutes, and I need to know if I'm presenting alone or if you're going to be professional about this. She walked away, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floor, leaving me standing there with every eye in the office watching my next move. Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. I stood frozen in the middle of the office, acutely aware of every whispered conversation, every sideways glance. My mind raced through impossible calculations. If I went home to change, what exactly would I change into? Another hijab? Would Sarah find fault with that too? And if I removed it entirely, would I even be able to look at myself in the mirror? Amira. Jessica's voice was soft as she appeared beside me. Are you okay? I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream that nothing about this was okay. Instead, I nodded and tried to look composed. I'm fine. Just processing. What she said was completely out of line, Jessica whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I've never seen anything wrong with how you dress. You always look more professional than half the people here. She wasn't wrong. Just yesterday, Brad from Creative had worn a t-shirt with a faded beer logo to a department meeting. Last week, Ashley from PR had shown up in ripped jeans and flip-flops. But somehow my carefully chosen, perfectly modest hijab was the professional crisis that needed immediate attention. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom, asterisk has the big presentation today, Habibti? Your Baba and I are so proud of you, asterisk. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not with everyone watching. 2 minutes, Amira. Sarah's voice carried across the office like a countdown to execution. That's when I noticed Mr. Chen from HR walking past, coffee in hand, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding. An idea sparked, desperate, maybe stupid, but an idea nonetheless. Mr. Chen. I called out, louder than I'd intended. Several heads turned. Could I speak with you for a moment? About the dress code policy? His eyebrows raised in surprise, but he nodded. Of course. My office? I could feel Sarah's glare burning into my back as I followed him across the floor. Her voice rang out behind us. Amira, you have 60 seconds to make your decision. Mr. Chen's office was a sanctuary of calm, family photos, neat stacks of papers, a small succulent on the windowsill. He closed the door and settled behind his desk. What can I help you with? The words tumbled out in a rush. I explained about the presentation, about Sarah's ultimatum, about the sudden concern over my professional appearance. With each sentence, Mr. Chen's expression grew more serious. I see, he said when I finished. And has anyone else ever expressed concern about your attire? Never. Not until today. Not until Morrison Industries. He was quiet for a long moment, then pulled out a yellow legal pad. I'm going to need you to write down exactly what happened, word for word if you can remember. And Amira? You're not going home to change anything. A knock on the door interrupted us. Sarah's assistant peeked in, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Chen? Sarah wanted me to let you know that the Morrison Industries clients have arrived, and she's starting the presentation without Amira since she's unavailable. My heart sank. 8 months of work on that campaign, and I was going to miss presenting it because I wouldn't compromise my faith. Actually, Mr. Chen said, standing up, I think we should join them. I'd like to meet these clients myself. The assistant's eyes widened. Oh. Should I tell Sarah you're coming? No need, he replied smoothly. We'll surprise them. Something in his tone made me think Sarah was about to get a surprise she wouldn't like. The conference room felt like walking into a lion's den. Through the glass walls, I could see Sarah mid-presentation, gesturing enthusiastically at the projected slides, my slides, the ones I'd spent weeks perfecting. The Morrison Industries team sat around the polished table, 3 middle-aged men in dark suits and a woman with silver hair pulled into a severe bun. Mr. Chen placed his hand on my shoulder. Ready? I nodded, though my stomach was doing gymnastics. We slipped in quietly through the back door just as Sarah was explaining our social media strategy. Which is why authentic brand storytelling is so crucial in today's market, she was saying, clicking to a slide I'd created about cultural authenticity in advertising. The irony wasn't lost on me. One of the Morrison Industries executives, a man with kind eyes and graying temples, noticed us first. Oh, hello there. Sarah spun around, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and barely concealed irritation in rapid succession. Mr. Chen. What a surprise. I thought you were in meetings all morning. My schedule cleared up, he said pleasantly. I wanted to personally welcome Morrison Industries to our offices. I hope you don't mind if Amira and I join you. She's been the lead strategist on this campaign. The woman with silver hair, Ms. Morrison herself, I realized, looked between Sarah and me with sharp, intelligent eyes. Of course not. We'd love to hear from the strategist directly. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, Amira was just dealing with some last-minute issues. I'd been handling the presentation. No issues now, I said, finding my voice. My heart was hammering, but I moved to the front of the room. I'd be happy to walk you through the campaign strategy. What happened next was both the best and worst 20 minutes of my professional life. The Morrison team was engaged, asking thoughtful questions, nodding at my explanations. Ms. Morrison particularly lit up when I discussed our multicultural market research. This is exactly the kind of inclusive thinking we need, she said, leaning forward. Our customer base is incredibly diverse, and frankly, we've struggled to connect authentically with different communities. I caught Mr. Chen's slight smile from the corner of the room. But Sarah wasn't done. As I finished explaining our proposed influencer partnerships, she interjected smoothly, of course, we'd want to ensure all our brand representatives align with Morrison Industries' image and values. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. What do you mean by that? Asked one of the male executives. Sarah's smile was razor sharp. Well, we'd want to make sure everyone representing your brand projects the right, aesthetic, professional, polished, mainstream appeal. Her eyes flicked meaningfully to my hijab. The silence that followed was deafening. Ms. Morrison's expression shifted from confused to cold in real time. Are you suggesting, she said slowly, that members of our team, or yours, might not be mainstream enough? I watched Sarah realize she'd stepped in quicksand. No, of course not. I just meant. Because I should mention, Ms. Morrison continued, her voice crisp, that my daughter wears hijab. She's our VP of marketing, actually. She was supposed to be here today, but she's traveling. The blood drained from Sarah's face. In fact, Ms. Morrison continued, standing up, part of what attracted us to your firm was seeing diverse voices on your team. It suggests you understand the markets we're trying to reach. She looked directly at me. Your presentation was excellent, Amira. Exactly the fresh perspective we need. Then she turned to Sarah, and her smile could have cut glass. Though I have to say, your comments about mainstream appeal are concerning. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Sarah's face had gone from pale to splotchy red, and I could practically see the gears grinding in her head as she scrambled for damage control. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Sarah said, her voice pitched higher than usual. I would never suggest, our company values diversity tremendously. Just look at our team. She gestured toward me like I was a prop in her desperate performance. Ms. Morrison's eyebrows climbed higher. A misunderstanding about what, exactly? You seemed quite clear about your concerns regarding mainstream appeal. The other Morrison Industries executives were exchanging glances that didn't bode well for anyone. One of them, a younger man with wire-rimmed glasses, was actually taking notes. That couldn't be good. Perhaps, Mr. Chen interjected smoothly, we should continue this conversation in a more private setting. Sarah, could I speak with you in the hallway for a moment? It wasn't really a question. Sarah's smile looked like it was causing her physical pain. Of course. Amira, would you mind entertaining our guests while we step out? As they left, I found myself alone with 3 of the most important potential clients our firm had ever pitched to, after watching my boss implode spectacularly in front of them. My mouth felt like sandpaper. Well, Ms. Morrison said, settling back into her chair. That was illuminating. The executive with wire-rimmed glasses, his nameplate read David Morrison, so clearly family business, leaned forward. Amira, can I ask you something directly? My stomach clenched. Of course. Have you experienced this kind of attitude before? Here at the company? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could lie, smooth things over, protect the company line. Or I could tell the truth and potentially torpedo not just Sarah but the entire Morrison Industries deal. Through the glass wall, I could see Sarah gesticulating wildly at Mr. Chen, who stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Other employees were pretending to work while obviously straining to eavesdrop on the drama. Today was the first time it was this direct, I said carefully. Ms. Morrison snorted. Diplomatic answer. But your face says more than your words. The third executive, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. We've been burned before by agencies that talk a good game about diversity but don't actually walk the walk. Our brand can't afford to be associated with that kind of hypocrisy. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, *OMG what's happening? Sarah looks like she's about to spontaneously combust in the hallway *. David Morrison was still watching me intently. The campaign you presented, it's brilliant work. Really innovative thinking about cultural authenticity. But if your company doesn't actually value that authenticity. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I could see the Morrison Industries contract slipping away, taking with it not just a major win for the company, but potentially my job. If this deal fell through after today's spectacle, someone would have to take the blame. And it probably wouldn't be Sarah. I believe in the work, I said quietly. I believe in reaching people where they are, honoring their experiences, their identities. That's not just strategy for me, it's personal. Ms. Morrison nodded slowly. I can tell. That's what makes your presentation so compelling. The conference room door opened, and Mr. Chen returned alone. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something different about his posture, more rigid, more formal. I apologize for the interruption, he said to the Morrison team. Sarah had to step away to handle an urgent matter. I'll be overseeing the rest of your visit personally. Through the glass, I could see Sarah's empty desk, her computer still glowing, her coffee cup still steaming. But no Sarah. Ms. Morrison and her team exchanged another look. Mr. Chen, she said slowly, I think we need to have a very frank conversation about this partnership. The next hour felt like being trapped in a fever dream. Mr. Chen had managed to salvage the Morrison Industries meeting, barely, but the damage was done. As our potential clients filed out, Ms. Morrison pulled me aside. Amira, I want you to know that your work today was exceptional. But we'll need to seriously reconsider moving forward with your firm until we're confident about the cultural climate here. She handed me her business card. If you ever decide to go freelance or join another agency, please call me. The implication hit me like a brick. She was essentially saying I was talented enough to poach, but my current company might be too toxic to work with. After they left, Mr. Chen asked me to wait in the conference room. 20 minutes later, he returned with Martha from HR, whose expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. My stomach dropped. Amira, Mr. Chen began, I need to understand exactly what happened before the meeting today. So I told them everything. Sarah's comment about my hijab violating dress code, the public humiliation, how she'd benched me from my own presentation. Martha scribbled notes furiously while Mr. Chen's jaw grew progressively tighter. This is a serious allegation, Martha said when I finished. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. In the meantime, Sarah has been placed on administrative leave. Administrative leave. The word should have felt like victory, but instead I felt sick. Word would spread fast in our small office. Everyone would know I was the one who got Sarah suspended. I could already imagine the whispers, the sideways glances, the accusations that I'd overreacted or played the victim card. I want to be clear, Mr. Chen said, reading my expression. This isn't about you filing a complaint. What happened in that presentation was unacceptable, period. Sarah's comments could have cost us a major client. But as I walked back to my desk, I realized the damage might already be done anyway. My phone had 3 missed calls from unknown numbers. Word was apparently spreading beyond our office walls. The marketing world was smaller than people realized. Jessica materialized at my cubicle like she'd been waiting in the wings. Holy shit, Amira. Is it true? Did Sarah actually say your hijab wasn't professional in front of Morrison Industries? Keep your voice down, I hissed, glancing around. Several coworkers were pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. This is insane, Jessica continued, mercifully lowering her voice. I mean, good for you for standing up to her, but what happens now? That was the question, wasn't it? I'd won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Sarah might be on leave, but she still had allies here. People who'd see me as the troublemaker who brought down a senior employee over political correctness. My computer dinged with a new email. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. The subject lines made my blood run cold. Heard about the drama today, eyes. Standing with Sarah raised fist. Some people can't handle office feedback. Diversity hire much? Face with rolling eyes. Playing the Muslim card, classless. Someone had leaked my work email to what looked like a network of Sarah's contacts outside the company. The messages ranged from passive-aggressive to openly hostile. One particularly charming sender had included a gif of a woman dramatically fainting with the caption, "When someone says your headscarf looks unprofessional." My hands shook as I scrolled through them. Jessica read over my shoulder and cursed under her breath. You need to show these to HR immediately, she said. But I was already thinking 3 steps ahead. If Sarah's network was mobilizing this fast, it meant she wasn't planning to go down quietly. Administrative leave was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk hope the attention was worth it. Some bridges shouldn't be burned. Fire asterisk. The war was definitely just beginning. The harassment escalated over the next 2 days. More emails flooded my inbox, some from colleagues at other agencies, others from complete strangers who'd somehow gotten hold of my contact information. The messages had evolved from petty jabs to outright threats about my future in marketing and how I'd burned bridges with the wrong people. I'd forwarded everything to Martha in HR, but her responses were increasingly terse. We're investigating, she kept saying, but I could read between the lines. The company was in damage control mode, and I was starting to look less like a victim and more like a liability. The tipping point came Thursday morning when I walked into the break room and found 3 coworkers huddled around someone's phone, snickering. They went silent the moment they saw me, but not before I caught a glimpse of the screen. It was a LinkedIn post, a long, carefully crafted statement from Sarah about cancel culture in corporate America and how one misunderstanding could destroy someone's career. She positioned herself as the victim. The post had dozens of likes and supportive comments from industry professionals. Sarah's version painted her as a dedicated manager trying to help a young employee understand corporate standards only to face career assassination for her efforts. She never mentioned my name, but anyone in our office would know exactly who she was talking about. The comments are wild, I heard Jessica whisper to someone later. Half the marketing community is weighing in. Some big names too. I pulled up the post on my phone, and my stomach dropped. The comment section was a battlefield. Former colleagues defending Sarah's years of mentorship and commitment to professional development. Others calling out the obvious discrimination. My name started appearing in replies, then in quote tweets as the post gained traction. By lunch, #professional standards was trending in marketing circles. I was hiding in a bathroom stall, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening, when I heard 2 voices I recognized, Amanda from accounts and Lisa from creative. I mean, Sarah can be tough, but she's not a racist, Amanda was saying. She's always been fair with everyone. Exactly, Lisa replied. And honestly? Some of these younger employees, they expect everything handed to them. Can't handle any feedback without crying discrimination. The hijab thing though. Amanda's voice dropped. That's pretty bad optics. But did she actually say it was unprofessional, or did she just suggest maybe toning it down for client meetings? There's a difference. My hands clenched into fists. Sarah's narrative was working. She was rewriting history in real time, and people were buying it. I stayed in that stall until they left, then spent another 10 minutes staring at my phone. The LinkedIn post now had over 200 interactions. Someone had screenshotted portions and posted them on Twitter, where the conversation was getting even uglier. A message notification popped up from my cousin Layla, ** Amira, people are sharing some article about you online. Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you? **. The fact that this had reached my family made everything feel exponentially worse. I imagined my parents seeing this, reading strangers debate whether their daughter was a troublemaker who couldn't handle corporate life. When I finally returned to my desk, there was a handwritten note tucked under my keyboard, ** some advice, maybe consider if this hill is worth dying on. Fresh starts can be good for everyone. *. No signature, but the message was clear. I looked around the office with new eyes. Conversation stopped when people saw me looking. Smiles felt forced. Even Jessica seemed more distant, professional rather than friendly. My phone buzzed with another text from that same unknown number, *. Saw the LinkedIn post. Told you some bridges shouldn't be burned. It's not too late to make this right. *. This time, I didn't forward it to HR. I was beginning to understand that Martha and Mr. Chen weren't the ones who would decide my fate here. The court of public opinion was already in session, and I was losing. The breaking point came Friday afternoon when I walked into what I thought was a routine check-in with Martha from HR, only to find the company's head of legal sitting beside her. David Reeves had the kind of sharp suit and sharper expression that meant someone was about to get very bad news. Amira, please sit down, Martha said, her tone more formal than it had been all week. We need to discuss some developments in the investigation. My chest tightened. Developments? David slid a manila folder across the table. We've received a formal complaint. Sarah's attorney has filed a defamation claim, citing the damage to her professional reputation from what they're calling false allegations of discrimination. The room seemed to tilt. False allegations? She dress-coded my hijab in front of clients. According to Sarah's statement, Martha continued, she was providing guidance on what she felt would be appropriate client-facing attire. She maintains there was no discriminatory intent, and several witnesses have corroborated that her feedback was delivered professionally. Several witnesses? I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. Who? David consulted his notes. Amanda Martinez from Accounts Receivable, Lisa Chen from Creative, and Tom Bradley from Business Development all provided statements supporting Sarah's version of events. My former allies. People I'd worked alongside for months, now painting me as an oversensitive employee who'd misinterpreted professional guidance. The betrayal stung worse than Sarah's original comment. There's more, Martha said, and somehow her expression grew even more grave. The social media attention has created complications. We've had 3 prospective clients reach out with concerns about the controversy surrounding our company. Morrison Industries has requested a meeting to reassess their comfort level with our partnership. The irony was suffocating. Sarah's discriminatory behavior had put the Morrison deal at risk, but somehow I was the one threatening the company's reputation. What are you saying exactly? I asked, though the answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. David leaned forward. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package. 3 months' salary, positive references, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. You'd be free to pursue other opportunities while we handle the legal complexities internally. They were asking me to disappear. To take their money and quietly exit stage left while Sarah returned to business as usual. The NDA would ensure I could never speak publicly about what happened, effectively silencing me while allowing the company to avoid any real accountability. And if I don't accept? Martha shifted uncomfortably. The investigation would continue, but given the conflicting accounts and the external pressures, well, we'd have to consider what's best for the company as a whole. Translation, take the money or get fired anyway, probably with cause, making it nearly impossible to find another job in marketing. My phone, sitting face up on the table, lit up with notifications. More LinkedIn comments, more Twitter mentions, more strangers weighing in on whether I was a victim or a troublemaker. The digital mob had made its decision, and corporate America was listening. I need time to think, I said, standing on unsteady legs. Of course, David replied smoothly. Take the weekend. We'll need an answer Monday morning. Walking back to my desk felt like a death march. The office was unusually quiet, that artificial quiet that meant everyone was desperately pretending not to watch the drama unfold. Jessica wasn't at her desk. Neither was Tom, who'd apparently decided Sarah's version of events was more career-friendly than the truth. I sat down and stared at my computer screen, seeing my reflection in the black monitor. A young Muslim woman who dared to stand up for herself, only to discover that the system was designed to make that as costly as possible. 3 months' salary sat on the table. My dignity lay in pieces on the floor. I had 48 hours to decide which one I valued more. That weekend, my apartment felt like a prison. I turned off most of my social media notifications, but the damage was done. Sarah's narrative had taken on a life of its own, spreading through marketing forums, industry groups, and professional networks like wildfire. My phone rang constantly, reporters who'd somehow gotten my number, distant acquaintances suddenly concerned about my situation, and headhunters who claimed they wanted to help but really just wanted the inside scoop on the drama everyone was talking about. Sunday morning, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a large envelope. Amira Hassan? I have a delivery for you. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens of them. Social media posts from colleagues I'd trusted, private messages they'd shared about me, LinkedIn conversations where my former allies discussed the Amira problem and how best to distance themselves from the fallout. Amanda's message to Lisa made me sick, ** honestly, I saw this coming. She always seemed like the type to play the victim card. Sarah was just trying to help her fit in. *. Tom's response in their group chat was worse, *. These diversity hires always think they're untouchable. Maybe this will teach HR to focus on qualifications instead of quotas. *. But the final screenshot was what made me sink onto my couch in shock. It was a text exchange between Jessica and someone named Mike. Asterisk management's been planning this for weeks. They needed a reason to get rid of Sarah anyway, budget cuts. Amira just gave them the perfect excuse. Two birds, one stone. Asterisk. Mike's response, asterisk brutal. So what happens to the Muslim girl? Asterisk. Asterisk who cares? She's just collateral damage. Better than layoffs, right? Asterisk. A handwritten note was clipped to the final page. Asterisk thought you should know what you're really dealing with. Some advice? Take the money and run. This goes deeper than you think. A friend asterisk. I stared at those words until they blurred. This wasn't just about Sarah's discrimination anymore. The company had been planning to fire her for financial reasons, and my complaint had simply provided convenient cover. They could look progressive by terminating a discriminatory manager while actually just cutting costs. And I was the expendable pawn who'd made it all possible. My laptop chimed with an email from Martha, asterisk Amira. I hope you're taking the time you need to consider our offer. I want to stress that we value your contributions and want what's best for everyone involved. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions before tomorrow's deadline. Asterisk. The corporate speak felt especially hollow now that I knew the truth. They'd manipulated this entire situation, allowing me to believe I was fighting for justice while they orchestrated their predetermined outcome. Another email arrived an hour later, this one from an address I didn't recognize. Asterisk Ms. Hassan, my name is Patricia Williams, and I'm an employment attorney specializing in workplace discrimination. I've been following your situation and would like to discuss your options. There may be more legal protections available than you realize. Asterisk. I googled her immediately. Patricia Williams had a track record of winning major settlements against corporations for discrimination and retaliation. Her client testimonials read like a who's who of employees who'd fought back against seemingly impossible odds. But winning would mean a prolonged legal battle, more public scrutiny, and burning every bridge I had left in the industry. The screenshots scattered across my coffee table were proof that those bridges were already smoldering anyway. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, asterisk Beta, your father and I saw some things online. Whatever you decide to do, we're proud of you for standing up for yourself. Asterisk. 24 hours until Martha's deadline. 3 months salary and silence, or a legal war I might not survive professionally. The choice felt impossible until I realized it wasn't really a choice at all. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I'd spent the entire night rehearsing different versions of the same conversation, but none of them felt right. As I walked through the office doors one last time, clutching Patricia Williams' business card in my sweaty palm, I noticed how different everything looked. The motivational posters about diversity and inclusion seemed like cruel jokes. The open floor plan that once felt collaborative now felt exposed and hostile. Even the coffee machine, where I'd shared countless conversations with Jessica about weekend plans and work frustrations, looked like a relic from someone else's life. Martha's assistant waved me toward the conference room with a sympathetic smile that felt patronizing. I wondered if she knew about the screenshots, about the group chats, about any of it. Or was she just another cog in a machine designed to grind people like me into acceptable silence? Amira, thank you for coming in, Martha said as I entered. David sat beside her, same legal pad, same practice-neutral expression. I trust you had time to consider our offer? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Patricia Williams. I'd called her back Saturday night and scheduled this exact time for her to reach out. Insurance, she'd called it. I'm sorry, I need to take this, I said, accepting the call on speaker. Martha and David exchanged glances. Ms. Hassan, this is Patricia Williams. I've reviewed the materials you sent over the weekend, and I wanted to confirm, are you currently in a meeting with your employer regarding the severance offer we discussed? Yes, I said, watching the color drain from Martha's face. Perfect. I want to make sure all parties understand that any severance agreement signed under the current circumstances would constitute unlawful retaliation under both federal and state civil rights statutes. Additionally, the social media harassment campaign your client has allowed to flourish creates liability for hostile work environment claims. David started scribbling frantically. Ms. Williams, this is David Chen, company counsel. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Mr. Chen. I have documented evidence of a coordinated effort to discredit my client, including internal communications that suggest this discrimination complaint has been used as cover for predetermined layoffs. That's textbook retaliation. The screenshots. Somehow Patricia had gotten access to more than just what my anonymous friend had provided. My stomach dropped as I realized this was about to get much bigger than I'd imagined. Martha leaned forward. I'm not sure what documentation you're referring to, but text messages, email chains, and internal Slack communications obtained through proper legal channels, Patricia interrupted smoothly. Including discussions about using Ms. Hassan's complaint to justify budget-related terminations while avoiding unemployment claims. Ring any bells? The silence stretched so long I could hear the air conditioning cycling on. David was no longer writing, he was staring at his legal pad like it might contain answers to questions he hadn't thought to ask. There's more, Patricia continued, and I realized she wasn't just representing me anymore, she was putting on a show. We've identified a pattern of discriminatory practices dating back 3 years, affecting at least 7 employees. The EEOC is very interested in companies that use diversity complaints as cover for cost-cutting measures. My phone buzzed with a text, asterisk Jessica outside your building. Says it's urgent, asterisk. Through the conference room windows, I could see her pacing by the elevators, looking like she hadn't slept. The same Jessica who'd been part of the group chat calling me collateral damage. Ms. Williams, I said carefully, I think we might need to pause this conversation. There's been a development. Martha stood up so quickly her chair rolled backward. What kind of development? That's when the fire alarm went off. The fire alarm's piercing wail cut through the conference room like a blade, but nobody moved. We all stared at each other in frozen tableau, Martha gripping the back of her chair, David's pen suspended over his notepad, me clutching my phone with Patricia Williams still on speaker. Well, Patricia's voice crackled through the chaos, this is certainly dramatic timing. Through the conference room's glass walls, I watched employees filing toward the stairwells in that lazy, practiced way of people who assumed it was just another drill. But Jessica was pushing against the crowd, trying to get to the elevators. Even from 3 floors up, I could see the panic on her face. We need to evacuate, David said, finally breaking from his paralysis. Actually, Martha's voice was ice cold as she reached over and ended my call. I think we can finish this conversation very quickly. Amira, you have 30 seconds to accept our offer before it's permanently withdrawn. The alarm kept shrieking. Through the window, I spotted 2 black SUVs pulling into the parking lot. Not fire trucks, vehicles that looked distinctly official. FBI? Department of Labor? My pulse hammered against my eardrums, competing with the alarm. You can't be serious, I said. There's a fire alarm. There's no fire, Martha snapped. Someone pulled the alarm to disrupt this meeting. Probably your lawyer friend trying to buy time for whatever theatrical display she's orchestrating. David was frantically typing on his phone, probably texting the corporate crisis management team. Martha, we really should evacuate. Protocol requires we handle this situation before it spirals completely out of control. She turned back to me. 20 seconds, Amira. Take the money and the NDA, or face the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, *, they know about the leak. Get out now, *. Another text, this one from an unknown number, *, Patricia Williams referred me. I'm the whistleblower who sent you the screenshots. Don't sign anything. Help is coming, *. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Jessica hadn't been part of the group chat plotting against me, she'd been the one secretly documenting it. The anonymous friend who'd sent the screenshots. And now she was in danger because of it. Through the glass, I saw security guards moving through the evacuating crowd, clearly searching for someone. Jessica had disappeared from view. Time's up, Martha announced, sliding the severance agreement across the table. Sign it now, or we'll make sure you never work in marketing again. We have contacts at every major firm in the city. The men in suits from the SUVs had entered the building. I could see them flashing badges to the security desk, moving with the kind of purpose that made my stomach flip. David's phone rang, and he answered it with shaking hands. What? No, that's impossible. We destroyed all, yes, I understand. He hung up and looked at Martha with undisguised terror. The Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division is here. With a warrant. For what? Martha demanded. Everything. They want all employment records, payroll data, and digital communications going back 5 years. His voice cracked. Martha, they specifically mentioned Project Reset. I'd never heard of Project Reset, but from the way Martha's face went ashen, it was significant. Very significant. The fire alarm finally stopped, leaving us in deafening silence. In the distance, I could hear footsteps echoing in the stairwell, heavy, purposeful footsteps moving up instead of down. Martha slumped into her chair, suddenly looking every one of her 50-something years. How? She whispered. My phone buzzed one final time. Patricia Williams, *, don't say another word until I get there. The cavalry has arrived, *. The footsteps in the hallway were getting closer. The footsteps stopped outside the conference room door. Through the frosted glass, I could make out at least 3 silhouettes, tall, official-looking figures that made David nervously straighten his tie and Martha grip her coffee mug like a lifeline. Ms. Hassan? A woman's voice called through the door. This is Agent Sarah Chen with the Department of Labor. We'd like to speak with you. Martha shot up from her chair. She's in a private meeting. You can't just. The door opened anyway. A woman in a crisp navy suit stepped in, followed by 2 men carrying boxes of what looked like evidence bags and digital equipment. Behind them, to my complete shock, came Patricia Williams, except she wasn't alone. Jessica walked beside her, clutching a thick manila folder to her chest like armor. Jessica? I stared at my former coworker, trying to process what I was seeing. Her usually perfect makeup was smudged, her hair disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept in days. I'm sorry, Amira, Jessica said, her voice barely above a whisper. I should have told you sooner. About everything. Agent Chen consulted her tablet. Ms. Rodriguez contacted our office Friday evening with substantial evidence of systematic wage theft, discriminatory practices, and retaliation. The evidence she provided corroborated complaints we'd been investigating for 8 months. 8 months. This had been building long before my hijab incident, long before I'd even known there was a problem. That's impossible, David stammered. Jessica's just a junior account coordinator. She doesn't have access to. Actually, Jessica interrupted, finding her voice, when you're the only person willing to work unpaid overtime to fix everyone else's mistakes, you end up with access to a lot of things. She opened her folder, revealing stacks of printed emails, spreadsheets, and what looked like photographs. Including Project Reset. Martha made a sound like a deflating balloon. Agent Chen turned to me. Ms. Hassan, we understand you filed a discrimination complaint regarding religious harassment. What we didn't expect to find was that your case was being used as a test run for something much larger. I don't understand, I said, though a sick feeling was growing in my stomach. Patricia Williams stepped forward, her earlier phone theatrics replaced by grim professionalism. Project Reset was a company-wide initiative to reduce payroll costs by systematically targeting employees who were likely to file complaints or cause problems. Religious minorities, pregnant women, older workers, people with disabilities, anyone who might cost the company money or create liability. Jessica's voice was shaking now. They had a spreadsheet, Amira. With scores. Risk assessments. Your complaint wasn't taken seriously because they never intended to address it. They were just documenting everything you did to build a case for firing you for cause. One of the federal agents was setting up what looked like a digital forensics kit, preparing to image the conference room computers. David watched him work with the expression of someone watching his career circle the drain. The beautiful part, Agent Chen continued, was that they could terminate people for being troublemakers while avoiding unemployment payments and discrimination lawsuits. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. How many people? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. 43 employees over 18 months, Jessica said. Starting with Aaliyah Johnson, remember her? The woman with lupus who needed schedule accommodations? They fired her for attendance issues right after she filed her ADA request. I did remember Aaliyah. She'd been kind to me during my first week, had complimented my hijab and shared stories about her own struggles with workplace acceptance. I'd wondered why she'd suddenly disappeared. Ms. Hassan, Agent Chin said gently, we're going to need your full cooperation. This case is much bigger than anyone realized. The federal agents were already boxing up computers and files. Through the conference room windows, I could see more official vehicles arriving in the parking lot. Martha hadn't said a word in 5 minutes. She just sat there, staring at her hands, as her entire world crumbled around her. I stared at Martha, waiting for her to say something, anything, but she just sat there like a broken marionette. The silence stretched until David cleared his throat nervously. This is all a misunderstanding, he said, his voice cracking. Project Reset was just a performance improvement initiative. Nothing illegal about optimizing our workforce. Agent Chen didn't look up from her tablet. Mr. Hoffman, I'd recommend you stop talking until you have legal representation. I don't need a lawyer. I'm not. David's phone started buzzing insistently. He glanced at it and went pale. That's corporate calling. Don't answer it, Martha finally spoke, her voice hollow. They'll throw us under the bus to save themselves. Jessica shifted uncomfortably beside Patricia Williams. There's something else, she said quietly. About the money. Agent Chen's head snapped up. What money? The budget allocations for Project Reset. They weren't just firing people to avoid lawsuits, they were pocketing the salary savings. Martha's been getting bonuses based on how much money she saved the company through strategic terminations. Martha's coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering against the conference table. The brown liquid spread across the polished wood, soaking into the documents she'd been so desperate for me to sign. Jessica, you don't know what you're talking about, Martha said, but there was desperation in her voice now. Those were legitimate performance bonuses. $20,000 for firing Aaliyah, Jessica continued, her voice growing stronger. $15,000 for Marcus Williams when he complained about the racist comments from the Peterson account team. $30,000 when you got rid of the entire accessibility compliance group after Sarah Chen, not you, Agent Chen, the other Sarah Chen filed her disability discrimination complaint. I felt sick. You were getting paid to destroy people's lives? Martha stood up so abruptly her chair rolled backward. You have no idea what it's like trying to manage a department with impossible metrics and a corporate office breathing down your neck every quarter. Sometimes you have to make hard choices. Hard choices? The words came out sharper than I intended. You tried to humiliate me in front of clients because I wear a hijab. You've been systematically targeting anyone who isn't a straight white man. Those weren't hard choices, they were hate crimes. David's phone kept buzzing. Through the conference room glass, I could see more employees gathering in the main office, whispering and pointing at the federal agents moving through the cubicles. Word was spreading fast. Ms. Hassan, Agent Chen said, we're going to need you to walk us through every interaction you had with Ms. Martinez and Mr. Hoffman. Every email, every meeting, every incident. Patricia Williams placed a protective hand on my shoulder. My client will cooperate fully, but we'll need guarantees about her employment status and protection from retaliation. What employment status? Martha laughed bitterly. After this circus, she'll be lucky if she can get a job managing social media for a food truck. Actually, one of the other agents said, looking up from David's computer, according to these emails, several competing firms have already reached out about Ms. Hassan. Apparently, word got around about her situation, and people are impressed by how she handled it. David looked confused. That's impossible. We haven't made any public statements. Jessica opened her folder again, pulling out what looked like printed LinkedIn messages. I may have mentioned to a few contacts that Pinnacle Marketing was about to lose one of their most talented junior associates due to discriminatory practices. The response was significant. My phone started buzzing with LinkedIn notifications. Then email alerts. Then text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Martha was staring at Jessica with naked hatred. You vindictive little. Ma'am, Agent Chen interrupted firmly, I strongly suggest you remain quiet. Anything you say is being recorded and can be used against you. The conference room door opened again, and more suits walked in, these ones looking expensive and corporate rather than federal. The cavalry Martha had been hoping for finally arrived. Except from their grim expressions, I had a feeling they weren't here to save her. The corporate lawyers swept into the room like vultures in Armani suits. The lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman with steel gray hair, took one look at the federal agents and visibly winced. I'm Rebecca Sterling, General Counsel for Pinnacle Marketing Group, she announced. We're invoking privilege on all company communications and directing our employees not to make any further statements. Agent Chen smiled coldly. Too late for that, Miss Sterling. We already have what we need. What you have, Sterling shot back, is the fabricated allegations of a disgruntled employee with clear motivation to lie. My stomach dropped. Even now, even with Jessica's evidence and federal agents literally boxing up computers, they were still trying to paint me as the problem. Which disgruntled employee? Jessica asked sweetly. Because I counted at least 6 people who've been feeding the FBI information for months. The color drained from Sterling's face. Ms. Rodriguez, as your employer, I'm directing you to. Actually, Patricia Williams interrupted, standing up, Ms. Rodriguez no longer works for Pinnacle. She submitted her resignation Friday evening, effective immediately, citing a hostile work environment and illegal retaliation. David's jaw dropped. Jessica, you can't just quit in the middle of a federal investigation. That looks incredibly suspicious. You know what looks suspicious? Jessica pulled out her phone and started reading. 37 text messages from Martha over the weekend, ranging from bribes to threats. We can work something out. Think about your career. You'll never work in this industry again. Should I keep going? Martha had gone completely white. Those were taken out of context. What context makes I know where you live sound professional? Jessica's voice was ice cold now. Sterling was frantically typing on her phone, probably alerting the parent company that their damage control strategy had just exploded. One of the federal agents appeared beside David's shoulder. Mr. Hoffman, we're going to need your computer password and your phone. I want to call my lawyer, David said, his voice barely a whisper. That's your right, Agent Chen confirmed. But the warrant covers all digital devices, so we'll be taking them either way. My own phone was still buzzing incessantly. I glanced at it and saw messages from competitors, industry contacts, even a few journalists. Jessica was right, word was spreading fast, and somehow I'd become the center of a story much bigger than my hijab. Ms. Hassan, Sterling said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, I think there's been a tremendous misunderstanding here. Pinnacle values diversity and inclusion, and we'd like to offer you a significant promotion and compensation package to resolve this matter quietly. She's offering you hush money, Patricia Williams whispered in my ear, loud enough for everyone to hear. In front of federal agents, Agent Chen added helpfully. That's bold. Sterling's smile faltered. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, Jessica laughed. God, you people really think everyone else is stupid, don't you? The lead FBI agent looked up from his evidence collection. Agent Chen, we've got the financial records. Project Reset was definitely generating illegal kickbacks. We're talking wire fraud, racketeering, possibly RICO violations. Martha finally cracked. This is insane. I was following corporate directives. Everything I did was approved by the regional office. Sterling's face went through several rapid expressions before settling on pure panic. Martha, stop talking. Right now. No. Martha stood up, shaking with rage. I'm not taking the fall for this alone. You want to know about Project Reset? It came straight from Chicago. From the executive committee. They set the quotas, they designed the bonus structure, they told us exactly which demographics to target. The room went dead silent except for the clicking of keyboard keys as the federal agents typed furiously. David buried his face in his hands. Martha, what have you done? What I should have done months ago, she snarled. Told the truth. Agent Chen looked positively delighted. Ms. Martinez, would you be willing to provide that information in a formal statement? The next few minutes felt like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. Martha, now apparently committed to burning down everything around her, started naming names with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been carrying this weight for years. Regional Director Michael Patterson designed the whole system, she said, her voice gaining strength. He called it optimization through attrition. Said we needed to streamline our workforce demographics to match client expectations. She turned to me with something that might have been an apology in her eyes. The hijab thing? That was Patterson's idea. Said we needed to find a way to make you quit that couldn't be traced back to religion. Agent Chen was typing so fast I thought her fingers might catch fire. And you have documentation of these directives? Company server, folder marked Workforce Analytics, Martha said. Password is Synergy 2023. All caps on Synergy. Sterling looked like she was having a heart attack in real time. Her phone was ringing nonstop now, and I could see sweat beading on her forehead despite the conference room's aggressive air conditioning. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number, but something told me to answer it. Aliyah Hassan? The voice was crisp, professional, with just a hint of a Boston accent. Yes? This is Catherine Walsh from Walsh, Morrison and Associates. I'm calling on behalf of several firms who are very interested in discussing immediate employment opportunities with you. Given the situation at your current workplace. I looked around the room. Federal agents were still photographing documents. Martha was now drawing organizational charts on the whiteboard. David was quietly crying into his hands. And Jessica was lip-tweeting the whole thing. I'm sorry, how did you get this number? Ms. Rodriguez provided it. She's also suggested we might want to discuss a joint venture. Apparently she has some very interesting ideas about ethical marketing practices. Jessica looked up from her phone and grinned. I may have started a group chat with some headhunters. Hope you don't mind. Before I could respond, Sterling's phone finally overwhelmed her ability to ignore it. She answered with a terse what that carried across the room. Even from several feet away, I could hear someone screaming on the other end. Sterling's face went through several shades of pale before settling on a sort of grayish green. Yes, sir, she said finally. Yes, I understand. The FBI is, yes, they're here now. No, sir, we cannot contain this anymore. She hung up and looked directly at me. Ms. Hassan, I've just been instructed to inform you that Pinnacle Marketing Group is prepared to offer you a settlement in the mid-six figures to resolve this matter privately. 7 figures, Patricia Williams said immediately. And a public apology. And a commitment to policy reform. And protection for all the whistleblowers. That's not how settlement negotiations work, Sterling protested. It is when the FBI has your client's executives on tape discussing illegal discrimination quotas, Patricia shot back. This isn't a negotiation. This is damage control. Agent Chen looked up from her evidence collection. Actually, we're going to need Ms. Hassan to hold off on any settlements until our investigation is complete. This case is expanding beyond a single office. My head was spinning. 6 hours ago, I'd walked into this building thinking my biggest problem was whether to fight a write-up about my hijab. Now I was apparently at the center of a federal investigation into a multi-state discrimination conspiracy. How big is this? I asked. Agent Chen exchanged a look with her partner. Let's just say Martha isn't the only office manager who's been getting bonus money for strategic terminations. The FBI investigation took 3 months, during which I became an accidental celebrity in employment law circles. The case expanded to cover 14 states and resulted in federal charges against 23 Pinnacle executives. Martha, true to her word, cooperated fully and received immunity in exchange for her testimony. David was fired but avoided criminal charges. Sterling disappeared into corporate legal protection and hasn't been seen since. The settlement Patricia negotiated was more than I'd ever dreamed of earning in my entire career, but honestly, that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was the phone call I got from a young Sikh man in Phoenix whose manager had been joking about his turban for months. He'd seen my story and finally reported it. Or the email from a black woman in Atlanta whose natural hair had been deemed unprofessional until her company saw the Pinnacle headlines and suddenly reversed their policy overnight. Or the hundreds of messages from people who said seeing someone fight back and win gave them courage to speak up too. Jessica and I did end up starting that consulting firm. Hassan Rodriguez Inclusive Marketing launched 6 months after the settlement, with our first client being, ironically enough, a major corporation looking to overhaul their hiring practices in the wake of their own discrimination scandal. We're booked solid through next year. But the moment I knew everything had really changed came 8 months later, when I was invited to speak at my old university's business school. As I walked to the podium wearing my favorite emerald green hijab and the power suit I bought with my settlement money, I saw a sea of faces that looked like America: hijabis and turban students, women with natural hair, men with beards, people who'd probably been told their whole lives that they'd need to tone themselves down to succeed in corporate America. 2 years ago, I stood where you're sitting, I began, convinced that success meant making myself smaller, quieter, less me. I thought professionalism meant conforming to standards created by people who'd never walked in my shoes. I told them about that horrible morning when Martha humiliated me in front of clients. About the weeks I spent doubting myself, wondering if maybe I really was the problem. About the moment I realized that staying silent wasn't protecting me, it was protecting a system designed to exclude people like us. The most radical thing you can do in a professional environment, I said, looking directly at a young hijabi in the front row who reminded me of myself, is to show up authentically and refuse to apologize for taking up space you've earned. After my talk, that student approached me. I have an interview next week, she said nervously. I've been thinking about taking off my hijab, just for the interview, you know? To increase my chances. I thought about myself 2 years ago, frantically Googling whether my hijab was too much for corporate America. Wear it proudly, I told her. And if they have a problem with it, that tells you everything you need to know about whether you want to work there. She smiled, straightened her shoulders, and I saw the exact moment she decided to bet on herself. 6 months later, she sent me a LinkedIn message. She'd gotten the job, hijab and all. Her company had specifically mentioned their commitment to inclusion during her interview, citing recent industry changes as motivation for their policy review. I printed that message and hung it in my office, right next to my business license and the framed photo of Jessica and me at our company launch party. Some days I still can't believe this is my life, that fighting back didn't end my career, it began it. My hijab hangs next to my blazers now, and every morning I choose both with equal confidence.